Hello. Sorry, I yodeled there a little bit. On this episode of Home Water Dispatch, I am back in the British Virgin Islands, island called Anegada, and I'm collaborating with a nonprofit called Beyond the Reef to do some movement ecology, basically understanding the movement patterns of a number of species of sharks, and to look at their connectivity to different parts of the coastal environment. So basically how they move from one habitat to another, and then how they maybe move from one island to another, and then how maybe they use a broader range. So it's pretty cool. We've tagged some tiger sharks that have made very broad migrations, and we've also had some do relatively local movement patterns. But today, we're just down the beach tagging some nurse sharks that are aggregating here to breed. So every June, July, we see lots of nurse sharks come into the shallows here. The females will come in, the males will pursue them. The males will clamp on to the pectoral fin of the female. They will copulate. It's pretty cool to observe. We tag them and we look at their movement patterns related to this important aggregation area. And those individuals, what we believe, come from fairly far and wide. And this is when essentially you can think about how all those genes of all the different individual sharks come together and they breed, and that breeding supports the future of the population. Pretty cool, basic biology, but we can't lose sight of the fact that there's something special about this location when it comes to the life history of nurse sharks. There's been some other great science done on nurse shark breeding and aggregations in the lower Florida Keys, but this is a pretty special location here in the British Virgin Islands. Now, what's also kind of neat, and I'm using this episode of Home Water Dispatch to think about aggregations in general, because down the other way, I'm going to turn the camera around this way, down the other way, this is also why I'm carrying my fly rod, there is some evidence that during the months of October through March or April, on the full moon, there's bonefish spawning aggregation that occurs down the beach, and then they move offshore to spawn, much like we were able to document on Eleuthera in the Bahamas and in French Polynesia and some other places around the world. And so there's something unique, about this area for a couple of different species, nurse sharks on one end, bonefish on the other. Those species each play important ecological roles in the environment in terms of moving nutrients from inshore to offshore when they aggregate, or when they're foraging in the shallow flats, and they're basically eating crabs and shrimp, and nurse sharks will even eat conch, right? And whenever something eats, something poops, and when they move around, they distribute nutrients. It's pretty cool ecologically. But much like the story with the nurse sharks coming from all over, we have some evidence in other locations that the bonefish will migrate, from maybe around Anegada or from other islands close by. They'll come into a specific aggregation spot at particular times in the month, at particular times of the year, to aggregate to spawn. And the way I think about that is we've got fish that are aggregating, they're bringing a diversity of genes together, different parents, right, spawning, and that creates a robust population. They're the future of the population, those babies that they produce. But when you have a large amount of individuals together, it creates a diversity of genes, you have really good gene flow, and it helps sustain and makes a really resilient and robust population. Pretty cool. There's a lot of cool science behind that, but all you need to know is these aggregations are really important, and making sure they are maintained and they stay robust and we are able to protect these areas is critical to their future. And, you know, for certain things, species like we want to chase, like bonefish, if there's going to be a local economy that's driven by tourism and fly fishing, for instance, like there is, you know, there's a historical one here in Anegada. It's relatively small, but it's a special place. It's a small community, so even if, you know, a few anglers every month will contribute money to the economy, and they'll eat some lobster and conch, and they'll go fly fishing and have some Heineken. It's awesome, right? And so, you know, from an economic standpoint, maintaining those aggregations are important. From an ecological standpoint, maintaining the aggregations is important. So why wouldn't we protect them? We have to identify them first, and then think about the conditions that make these areas special, and then use science to inform policy and management that allows us to adequately protect these locations. That doesn't mean we can't use them. You know, it doesn't mean we can't go fly fishing, or I know down the beach they do some kiteboarding, which is kind of fun. And there's an awesome reef off here, you know, and there's people fishing out there. It doesn't mean we can't use these places, but we need to respect the fact that during particular times of the year, there are sensitive things going on that help nurse sharks maintain their populations and that help bonefish maintain their populations. So I just want to keep that in mind as we think about how you, as a lover of fish or a lover of sharks, wants to advocate for the future of critters that you like to fish for, or that critters that you like to see maybe when you're in a public aquarium and you fall in love with a particular species and you really want them to you know, be around for generations and hopefully maybe see them in the wild one day. You know, back at home, you know, close to my house, you know, there are species of trout that go and form, that move to particular parts of a stream that will spawn and form redds. And that's where they breed, they spawn. And, you know, sometimes it's really concerning when you go to those locations and you see anglers waiting in areas around the time when trout are spawning. Why would we want to do that? We want to make sure that those spawning areas are protected, that we're not trampling redds, because they represent the future of the population. To me, it seems like common sense, and it's something that you should advocate for, that protection of those areas. If those fish and those places are important to you, show up, speak up, use some informed advocacy to share what you know and share your passion. But in the meantime, I'm going to, rather than continuing to ramble and fall in a hole here out on the flats, I'm gonna go and see if I can scope out some more bonefish and walk down the beach. And we're waiting for the tide to come in, and hopefully the nurse sharks will reappear and we'll wrangle some of those. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Home Water Dispatch, really sort of recapping, thinking about the importance of these critical points in time in a fish's or shark's life history when they aggregate, they come together, what that means for the maintenance and the resilience, of their populations, and how we can use some science, looking at their movement ecology and where they spend their time and how that changes seasonally, and maybe use some cool drone technology or cameras to identify what's going on in terms of their behaviors, identify those areas, and then use that objective science to lobby for more policy and management so that we can protect those critical points in time where we want those fish to make babies and support the future of the population. All right, I'm gonna head back, grab my water, go do more fishing, and tag some more lemon sharks. Oops, did I say lemon sharks? Nurse sharks. All right, my bad. Okay, because I just saw lemon sharks swim by. All right, we'll see you later. Check out more episodes of Home Water Dispatch as they emerge. Bye.